Hey guys, it's Miss Gray. This is the homework video for week number 4. And so the first topic I want to talk about, really, I'm going to give you just a little bit of notes on slope, intercept, form versus standard form. So slope intercept form we've talked about before. That's y equals mx plus b. And then standard form, I think I might have mentioned once, is ax plus by equals c. Notice we use b in both, but these are different b's. So this is the y-intercept. This is a coefficient of y, but it's a different number. But this has y by itself. Great, can't write this morning. Y all by itself, and then it has everything else over here on the other side. Whereas if you look at this one, this has the x and y term together. And then this number over here is a constant. It's just a number by itself. But it really is just rearranging the same equations. So let's start with the easiest one. So the easiest one is changing into standard form. So this is topic ESP. So if I look at the example y equals negative 5x minus 10, basically my goal is to put x and y together, constant along. So x and y are here. I need to have them together on the same side, and that's my constant. So I'm going to leave that here by itself. So let's add 5x, because the opposite of negative 5x is to add 5x so that they cancel. And then this becomes 5x plus y equals negative 10. Okay, next example. Y equals negative 6x minus 2. So again, I need to move this over here to be with the y. So I have 6x plus y equals negative 2. Don't forget, since the y here had nothing in front of it and the y here had nothing in front of it, that's why it's a plus y. If it had a different sign, obviously it'd be a different equation. So 6x okay, for this one, y equals 10x plus 3. So I'm going to move the 10x over here to be with y by subtracting it this time, since it's positive. And if I subtract it here, I end up with negative 10x plus y equals positive 3, which brings me to a good point that we need to mention, which is the leading coefficient. So we write it with x first. That leading coefficient, the first one, needs to be positive. So this has to be a positive number, which means that if I'm looking at this, right now the negative 10 is not positive. So the way I switch that is literally just to go through and switch each sign. So this sign is going to switch to a plus, this sign is going to switch to a negative, and then this invisible plus here is going to switch to a negative. So this becomes a positive 10x minus y equals negative 3. So I just switched the sign of each piece, and that effectively multiplies it by negative 1. This will turn that leading coefficient into a positive. If you don't do that, it'll mark it wrong. So this one, if I subtract x, I end up with negative x plus y equals 1. But then I have to switch all that, so I end up with x minus y equals negative 1. Okay, so now if we move on to switching into slope-intercept form, so this is topic P5F. This is a little bit more challenging. My goal is to get y by itself. So if you look at the example, y minus 8 equals 10 times x plus 6. The y is almost by itself, right? Really all I have to do is add 8 to both sides to move it over so that this is over here. And now I have y equals 10 times x plus 6, and then that plus 8 at the back. The other thing, though, to keep in mind is if you look at the instructions, it does say in simplest form, which means that I can't just leave this distributive property here. So if I was going to restart this problem, just because I think it'll be easier, you could just distribute right now and be finished, but I think it's easiest probably for you to distribute here. So I get 10 times x, right? 10x, and then 10 times 6. And then do this step where we add 8 to both sides. Because then you'll have a like term to combine it with. And I think you'll probably make less mistakes than if you try to do this. Because a lot of kids here probably would try to add 6 and 8. So it's really 68. So solving for y isn't that hard, but you do have to make sure you simplify. And usually that means combine like terms or distributive property. So you got to look for those things so that you can write it out as simple as possible. All right, so let's switch to the next problem. So this one was y equals 10x plus 68. So same idea here. Y minus 3 equals 1/10 times x minus 10. So I'm going to start by distributing. So y minus 3 equals 1/10 x. And then 1/10 times negative 10 here. So 1/10 of 10 is just 1. So that's a minus 1. And then I'm going to add 3 to move the 3 over. -1 plus 3 is +2. Y equals 1/10 x, so don't forget the x, plus 2. So these really follow that same format again and again, right? First you need to distribute and then get rid of that number that's on the other side of the book. If I jump forward, it jumps all the way up to 68 because it doesn't actually have that many different types of problems. They're kind of all set up the same. So if you look at this one, 13x minus 6y equals -11. This is almost in the right form, right? The x and the y are together. Oh, this is in standard form, right? So it's almost in something that we worked with before, but now we need to get this y by itself, which means there's a bunch of things to do here. So if I'm trying to get the y alone, I need to start with the thing that's farthest away, this 13x, and move it to the other side. So I end up with -6y equals -13x minus 11, right? So I can't combine these because they're not like terms. And now I have to get rid of that -6. Since it's -6 times y, I have to divide it. And I would say just divide each thing by -6. Instead of looking at it the whole side, it'll be, then you have these fractions that you have to simplify, and they can't be simplified in this problem. This is kind of a nasty problem as far as the numbers they're using. So this would be y equals, so -13 divided by -6. If I was going to simplify that fraction, I could just put 13/6, right? The negative signs cancel with an x. And then same thing here, -11, -6 really cancels to make a positive, but 11/6 is still 11/6. So that's pretty messy. Let's type it in and make sure I did it right. Okay, so 13/6x plus 11/6. So a little bit more challenging, right? With the fractions, but it's still possible. And then if you look at this one's not so bad. Same kind of ideas, right? So if I have to get the y by itself, so first let's start by getting it over onto that side by itself by adding. So I end up with 11y equals -20x, those cancel, plus 7. And now I have to get rid of this -11 by dividing each piece. So I have y equals negative 20 over 11, right? So the negative signs don't cancel. There's only one, so it stays x, and then that's just plus 7. So then we're back to the same type as before. Okay, the last topic is definitely more of a review. GD7. So if I'm looking at that one, that's where I'm combining different parts of functions to see which one's bigger or smaller. So it gives me two different ones listed two different ways and asks me to find for this one the slope. So if I'm looking at function A here, the slope, I can pick 2 points from this table and just figure out the rate of change, remember? So let's do -5, -20, then -1, -4. So this side, to get from -20 all the way up to -4, right? I have to add 16. And then to get from -5 up to -1, I have to add 4. So that change in y over the change in x is 4. So my slope for function A is 4. And then if I look at function B, that's just an equation, y equals 3x minus 2. So my slope is the number in front of x. So if I'm looking, function A is greater. So it's having you compare things you already understand. So I'll let you look at that one. I want to find one that has a y-intercept. Here we go. So this one's asking about y-intercept. So this is a little more challenging with the table mostly. If you're looking at the graph here, y-intercept is where it crosses, right? So for function A, my y-intercept, it crosses at 0. So then for function B, I have a table. And so you kind of have to look at how your table is acting. So right now I have -8, -5, -3. And what I really want to know is I want to know what happens when x is 0. I want to know what 0b is, where it crosses that y-axis. And so I just need to kind of move down my table until I get to that point and see what it ends up being. Let's look at the slope here. So -13, -7, -3. So this is adding 6 and then adding 3 here, or adding 4. Or adding 2. Sorry, I had to pause for a sec. And then if you look at those ratios, you get 6 over 3 or 4 over 2, which really just means 2, right? 2 over 1. So that means it's going up to over 1 each time if you're looking at a graph. But that also means it's going up 2 on this side and up 1. So if I want to go up 1 here to -2, then I'd have to go up 2 here to -1. So if I keep tracing my way through that table by doing this rule here, so if I can get to 0, so I'd have to do -1 and 0. Sorry to write over my old work. I didn't give myself space. But if I add 1 on this side to get here, then I'd have to add 2. So I'd end up with a +1. And then if I add 1 here, I would add 2 here. So that would give me a +3. So this crosses at 0, 3. So the A has a smaller y-intercept. Which, the other option here is you could graph these points and compare them and see how it compares to the graph that's here, the one that's up on the screen. So I would definitely say y-intercept is a little more challenging to deal with than the slope. just because you kind of have to think about a little bit more what's happening with the relationship. Whereas with this one, we kind of have a little more strategies for just solving for it. Okay, let me know on an asynchronous time though if you have questions. You can always come in and stay. Thanks.